All right, everybody, welcome back to the show. This is Root Solution, learning how to control the basics. This is Kyron,
This is
This
Noah.
is
and
And we got
today
Victor.
we got a very special guest. We got Victor Roman. Welcome to the show, Victor.
Hey, thank you.
Yeah,
Happy to be here.
awesome, awesome. So yeah, me and Victor go way back. We went to the same high school. We played basketball together. You were a freaking stud. All the girls wanted you, and you were a freaking star basketball player. Um, but yeah, I think that we really wanted to have you on because of your story, right? So just the background, like what I remember from high school was you were super strong, super, for lack of a better term, buff, right? And just like an overall really good athlete. And then like several years later, I see you and you look totally different. But why don't you go ahead and share your journey?
Yeah. Again, I'm super excited to be here. Thank you for letting me share my story.
Of course.
But yeah, basically, my health journey really began about 10 years ago. Again, going back to high school, that's when I really started to feel sick. I don't know if you remember, I actually had to get a knee surgery because as a sophomore, I
Oh
tore my
yeah.
meniscus and I had to get a knee surgery. But I noticed that after the surgery, I wasn't the same. I was sluggish. I was getting sick all the time. I had lack of energy. Something wasn't right. I just didn't know what it was. Eventually, I graduated from high school. I started going to college. And around the age of 20, that's when everything really hits. I really just broke down. I became bedridden for about 2 years. It
That's
took a
crazy.
toll. Yeah, basically during that time, I went from like a couch to the bed. It took a total of 5 years to really start moving again, but with a lot of pain. And then it took a total of anywhere from 8 to 10 years to really just be here where I am today.
So
And
not
yeah,
to
sorry.
interrupt, but that's crazy. Like that all in its own right. So you were in your early 20s, bedridden.
Yeah. I pretty much lost all my 20s to
What
health issues.
was the diagnosis that had you bedridden?
So it was a whole laundry list, honestly, but I had everything from pericarditis to lupus to rheumatoid arthritis, bone spurs, eye floaters. I was taking 15 pills a day and more, man. I had almost everything that you could think of.
Was it like a gradual thing that it all happened, or did you kind of have it happen all at once?
Well, it was somewhat gradual. I mean, like going back to high school, I had something called Osgood-Schlatter disease, right, which is
Okay.
basically inflammation of the top of the tibia,
Right.
and that really eliminated my basketball or the effort that I could give on the court because it was just constant pain. But to me, that was the first signs of really developing RA, right?
Right.
Rheumatoid arthritis. Eventually, as I graduated from high school, I started getting pericarditis.
Okay.
And when I was 20, I was in and out of the hospital because of that. They thought it was like a heart attack in the beginning. Eventually, they started giving medication. And then it went from just pericarditis to chronic pericarditis, where they couldn't really do anything and they wanted to do heart surgery.
Damn.
And then that's when I really, I guess, got a little scared, and I did not want to go through it because actually, in the beginning, I was majoring in kinesiology. My
Right.
goal, my goal was to be a physical therapist as well, and so I knew my 101s, right, my anatomy, my chemistry, and all of that, and I knew that taking the layer of the heart is not the most sensible thing.
Right.
It's very
Right.
dangerous, right? So in my mind, there has to be another way. There has to be another way. And going back to your question, it started with pericarditis. Eventually, I started really developing bone spurs and arthritis. And that's the combination of all those things is what really left me bedridden.
Okay. So we oftentimes find with a lot of the conversations we have with people that misdiagnoses are all over. I think our understanding of the human body might be pretty limited in terms of from a medical perspective. And like a lot of cases with RA, Austin Slaughters, a lot of the things that you actually mentioned, to me, they stand out as just applying some sort of definition to something that maybe we're kind of guessing, right? Shot in the dark a little bit. Did you kind of get that feeling as you were going through the process that like, hey, maybe this isn't what they say it is?
I mean, yes and no. The way I look at health or the body is basically going back to what you were saying, right? They do a bunch of studies, and sometimes those studies are not correct. So
Yeah.
yes, in a sense, right? They always go to, what is your blood analysis? What is your blood analysis? But in reality, your blood analysis really changes by the hour or by the day, right? One day it could be these numbers, the next day it could be some other numbers, right? So it's not very accurate. The most accurate thing for me is symptomology. So the one thing that I hear a lot of people talk about when they see a medical doctor is it's all in your head, because the blood analysis says that you are doing great, everything is within the level. So everything must be in your head. And to me, that's unfortunate because I feel like symptomology is more accurate than your blood analysis because you are actually feeling what's happening in your body. And
Can you define that term for me? I've never heard that term before.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's a term that's used, but symptomology is basically you feel the pain, right? You have a symptom and you feel the pain. My shoulder hurts, my ankle hurts, my chest hurts. I can't breathe well. So that's what I call symptomology, right? Those to me tell me more information than your blood analysis.
Agreed. Very much so.
You know what I mean? So when I look at your blood analysis, yeah, I could come to certain conclusions. But if you tell me what you're feeling, I could say, oh, it's the nervous system. Oh, it's this system. Oh, it's that. And I could come to a conclusion and give you more accurate information on how to overcome some of those challenges.
I wholeheartedly agree with that. I think there's a big misnomer in medical where, they don't listen to patients enough. I think, as a cash-based PT, like I don't have to worry about insurance. So I get to sit down and have real conversations. And I think, there's a perception of pain in the medical industry and they just kind of ignore it, which is, it's just really sad. And that was, I think, the thing that stood out to me, when I had looked on your Instagram, I kind of saw a little bit of your story, and I can't imagine what it feels like to be 20 years old in that kind of pain with that kind of severity and just kind of getting these like bullshit kind of doom and gloom answers.
Yeah, it was rough. It really got to a point where my family and I weren't sure if I was going to make it or not because, sometimes words are only so much. You can't really express what's really happening in the moments. But, when I graduated from high school, I was working full time. And because of work, I was able to have health insurance. Nice. But after I got sick the first time, I couldn't work those hours. So I lost my health insurance. So I had to go to a, what would you call it? A state hospital, I guess.
Yeah.
Like clinic. Yeah. And, I'm grateful for those hospitals, but sometimes it's really rough because there's so many people there. They only allocate maybe 10 minutes per person. So you tell them what you feel. They're like, okay, here's the prescription. Get out of here. Next. Yeah. And that's very frustrating. I mean, it's not just the physical side, it's the emotional, the mental side that you really need someone to listen to.
Right. Well, and I think that's a lot of it on its own right? There's a psychological piece to pain too. And like being human and listening to people talk and like hearing their stories and sympathizing and offering a good human moment, I think really, really means a lot. And it's interesting, like, and not to get political, but like, unfortunately, healthcare has become this really bizarre thing where it's almost like socioeconomically driven, right? Like, if I don't have expenditure, massive amounts of wealth, I don't have an opportunity to see the direct specialist that I need to see. And you could even make that argument of Kai and I, right? Like, so of course we're biased, but we think we're pretty good PTs and we're cash based. And that certainly isn't cheap, right? And so that's kind of the struggle with like hearing stories like this is like, well, okay, I have health insurance, great. but it was taken from me because I can't work. Well, I can't work because I'm sick. So now what? Now what do I do, right? So now I have to go to a clinic. And unfortunately, in clinics, you're typically looking at overworked staff with limited resources, with, I mean, the amount of people in clinics is crazy. Any of you out there that have been to clinics understand this, but in my experience with clinics has been, you know, it's full waiting rooms on a regular basis all the time. You're trying to show up when it opens in hopes that you can get in to see somebody that day. And you're talking about, for you, you're somebody who's young, sick, and in dire need of true care, and you're in a clinic, which is, I would argue, maybe the worst place to be.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I remember once I literally had to camp out at the clinic just so I could get someone seen, because it took, 9-10 hours just to see a doctor. And then they don't really treat you during that time. They just kind of say, well, here's a pill. Well, this is what they did to me. Here's a pill. It'll take away the pain. Come back tomorrow and we'll actually have a doctor see you. Now, that's very frustrating, especially as a 20-year-old. You're seeing a cardiologist and you have people that they're 70, 89 years old, and they're really frustrated not knowing what to do or if anyone could help you.
Yeah, agreed. So, I mean, this obviously went on for quite some time. You got to a point where, I mean, you said, up to 5 years almost. So you really lost your whole 20s. At what point did you start? I mean, I know the end of the story, right? I know that we found a raw vegan diet that helped us find what sounds like reduce inflammation and get our body functioning correctly again. How did we get there, though? Like, I'm near death. I'm in a clinic, and I've got Victor in front of me now, healthy and happy. How do we get there?
Sure. Well, basically, it all started by just listening to your body. I think that's very important. I think the average person doesn't quite listen to their body. So for me, I remember I was dealing with chronic pericarditis, and I had a lot of pain. And I remember one day I went to go take my medication. During this time, I was taking 15 pills a day. So went to go take my medication to reduce the inflammation and take away the pain. But I noticed instead of reducing the pain, it actually increased it.
100%.
So in my mind, I was like, wait, this doesn't make sense. How can I consume something or a pill that's supposed to reduce the pain and increase it? So that was the first time where I really started listening to my body. And then from there, I was very desperate, to be honest. And I started playing with medication, something that I do not recommend people do. It's very, very dangerous.
But I started desperation.
Yeah. I mean, if the medical community said, here, take one pill, I would take 1.5 just to see how my body would react. Or instead of taking one, I would take a half a pill. And I would just experiment with myself to see what my body will actually do. But it was very dangerous. Even the doctors would tell me that the medication that I was taking was very, very toxic, and I should be careful. Well, since the medication was supposed to reduce the inflammation, in my mind, I thought, well, maybe I could do something. Maybe I could do it through food. I'm going to start consuming food that is also going to reduce the inflammation within the body. First thing I took out was basically, any artificial sugars, candy. Then I took any fast food, like, your typical, like your McDonald's, your Burger Kings, all of that, pizza, took it all away. And from there, I just kind of started just taking things away. I started reading a lot too about food that would reduce the inflammation. And I realized, I know people have different perspectives, but this is my perspective, and this is what I believe to be true and what actually worked for me, is I realized that most of the food that we consume actually produces some kind of inflammation or another. And that's how I truly ended up to to fruits and vegetables. When I ended up with fruits and vegetables, I thought I hit another wall because I was like, this can't be true. I literally took most of the food out, right? From meats to legumes, your rice, your quinoa, all of that. I took it out. But then I remembered I was at the library. I checked out a book, and it was about holistic healing. And in the back of the book, it had a link to a Facebook group about raw veganism. Never in my life have I heard that terminology. Went to the Facebook group and I realized that there's a whole community that was eating the way that I found to be true, which is fruits and vegetables. From there, I just started to practice the diet, work on it, and fast forward almost 8 years later, here I am. Now, it wasn't just a diet. Basically, what I practice and what I try to help people is detoxification. Detoxification is truly an art, right? One thing is a diet, one thing is to eat a certain way, but really learning how to detoxify and cleanse the body, it's an art, and it's learning how to do it. And throughout the years, this is basically what I did. I kept my diet, detoxify the body, and utilize herbs to help support it and cleanse it as well.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot here, right? And so
Yeah.
I'll be totally honest. Like when Kai and I first initially talked about this, I have mixed feelings on raw veganism, but one of the things that stands true and makes a lot of sense to me is, I read an article that everything we eat in the essentially post-industrial era has traveled at least 1,200 miles, right? So like we're not eating anything that's locally grown, right? So like nothing's from here,
Right.
which is crazy to think about, right? Because that means it's got preservatives. That means it's got all kinds of other crap in it. The other thing that really stands out to me that really kind of bothers me is most foods that we ingest, whether it be vegetables or whether it be fruit, have been genetically modified. Like a banana is not really a banana anymore, right? A watermelon's not really a watermelon. Like apples aren't really apples. All these things have been enhanced quite significantly. And so when you start to think about like the gut cultures and the gut biomes and the way we digest food and the way we absorb micronutrients, one of the things that's always kind of stood out to me was like, we don't eat anything that's whole or real anymore. Everything we eat has been literally modified. And like, even if I wanted to grow a garden, I couldn't grow a garden off real seed because the real seed literally doesn't exist because it's all zombie seed, right?
Right.
And so the thing that does stand out to me about a raw vegan lifestyle is that if you're taking somebody who's micronutrient deprived, right, and their whole lives essentially, and you can argue at a young age, kids, I mean, especially now, are getting the worst quality of food. This raw vegan lifestyle is really interesting because it is really the only way to solidify in-depth micronutrient profiles that can help people become well. And there's, like if you go over, there's millions of pages of research suggesting like fruits in the Amazon that can like heal cancer and like all kinds of crazy shit like that. You hear it all the time. It's not weird, but those places are super, super, super enriched, and they're ecosystems that haven't been evolved or adapted by humans, right? Like
Right.
you're talking about guys that are traveling 1,200 miles themselves to find seeds and berries and things like that. And so that's the thing that really stands out to me about like a conversation like this, and I find really interesting. When you look at something like rheumatoid arthritis, like by definition, it's just inflammation, right? It's chronic inflammation with no reduction of inflammation. It's your nervous system not being able to create balance with reduction. And so it makes sense. It makes a lot of sense to look at your micronutrient profile and do you have the ability to downregulate your system to heal? And that's really the only time we heal. And so that was what really stood out to me and I thought was interesting about this story. As far as, your healing process, did you find it was pretty quick? Did you find it was slow? Did you kind of notice a difference right away?
So you do notice something happening. For me, I think it took anywhere between 4 to 6 months, and I saw a progression.
Sure.
But to be honest, when I talk to people, I tell them it all depends on your genetics and how toxic you are within the body. It really comes down to those two: how well genetically you are, and how toxic you are, and in what condition you are in, right? So that all depends person by person. I can't say if you do this diet, you'll be well in a year or in 4 months and 6 months. No, everyone's different. And, usually when I help other people, I take them as individuals, not as a group. Now, you're completely right. We don't have good quality fruit and vegetables, or in general, just we don't have it, and it's very unfortunate.
Well, to be clear, meat's worse. To be really clear, so like,
Yeah,
I don't want
it is.
anyone to think that like I'm biased in either direction, because the reality of meat is like we don't have a whole lot of livestock that's raised in the wild, that's grown, that's not sick, that hasn't been affected by a genetic seed, right? So the reality, the harsh reality of these conversations I have with people is like, it's kind of all garbage, at least in America.
Right, it is, unfortunately. And you know, if you do my diet, the best places to be is in a tropical place. So
100%, right?
you know, that's the
Real
place.
food.
Yes, you just pick a mango, a banana off the tree, and papaya. So yes, but you know, going back to the diet, you know, I don't really focus. You don't get me wrong, nutrition is very important, but to getting healthy is not so much the focus on nutrition. It's basically focus on a specific system, which is the lymphatic system. And what I tell people is we have three major systems. You know, we have the nervous system that moves you, we have the blood system that feeds you, and we have the lymphatic system that cleans you. Now, when we detoxified, we're really focusing on the lymphatic system, right? A lot of people have issues with malabsorption, you know, absorbing certain micronutrients, as you were talking to. But what I tell people is, well, there's 4 steps to really be able to absorb micronutrients, right? And the first one is digestion. Are you digesting correctly? The second step is absorption. Are you absorbing the micronutrients? And the third step is utilization, which is your endocrine system. Are you utilizing the micronutrients, the nutrition that you are absorbing from your food? And finally, the last step is basically getting rid of the waste that you just consume, right? Those are the 4 steps. So before a person really says, oh, you know, I'm low on iron, I'm low on this vitamin, we really have to focus on those 4 steps. Once we adjust your digestion, you're able to digest correctly. Once we're able to absorb your nutrients, which that comes from cleansing the body, moving the lymphatic system, cleansing your GI tract, and then utilization, which again comes to the endocrine system, and finally getting rid of the waste, then that's when we really get to see health and really improvements on the person.
When it's essentially, I mean, it kind of comes down to the idea that like, if I create a functioning system, the hormone profiles, the inflammation markers, all those things are going to adapt themselves.
Say that one more time.
If we create a decent profile, right, and everything's working correctly, all of those hormone profiles, all of those systems are going to essentially auto-regulate themselves to function.
Yes. Yes. You know, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm into it. I like it.
Yeah. You know, there's a reason why we cut ourselves and we heal, right? Well, why don't we heal with certain diseases like, let's say, pericarditis, RA, rheumatoid arthritis? Well, it's because of the environments, how acid or how alkaline you are. And at the end of the day, what I tell people is we're walking chemistry. We're walking chemistry. Anything you eat, smell, drink, think is changing that internal chemistry. Now, there's only 2 sides, right? We live in a dualistic world. So are we going alkaline or are we going to the acid side? And that's basically all that life really is, those 2 sides. Now, when it comes to RA, I remember when I was taking my chemistry class in school back in the day, we had an acid and we had calcium in 2 different jars that were both liquid. And I remember we mixed them together and the acid side was higher than the alkaline side, and it became into a rock. But then we added more calcium and it dissolved. We added more acid and it became a rock. So I remember when I was researching and just really trying to figure out how can I reverse my RA, I remember about that experiment. And since we're walking chemistry, all we have to do is alkaline the body just enough so the body actually reverses that leaching of the calcium of the joints and the bones.
Okay. Yeah, and I think there's a lot to be. I mean, that's not necessarily a new idea by any means, right? There's quite a bit of literature on that.
Yeah.
And I think, from my perspective, I think that's kind of weighs out the way in the function of the nervous system to begin with. Like, it's just more in depth, right? It's
Right.
the idea that, like, if I can down regulate, I should be less acidic, which means I can be more alkaline, which means I can heal. And then the acidity is essentially where we create stiffness. The stiffness is necessary under tension and load, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So I mean, that's essentially like the duality of the nervous system on its own right, right? And that's ironically, it's funny. I didn't really expect this, but there's a lot of parallels to some of the things that we've kind of talked about historically, right, Kyle? Like, this kind of sounds like the autoregulation diet, but in its kind of more extreme sense. But being used for wellness and sickness, it does make sense, right? Because the reality is like the autoregulation diet. We're talking about people that are on a scale of 1 to 6, they might be like a 7, whereas Victor's talking to people that are a 10, and they're, they're in an extreme circumstance where they've got to make extreme change.
Yeah,
It's interesting.
I think that it really just like, everyone's looking for that one size fits all, or like, this is the thing that's going to cure me. But I think that, like Victor said, we're walking chemistry, and we, one day this is going to work for me, the next day this isn't going to work for me. Like, it's always changing, and science is always changing. So and like you said in the very beginning, like our understanding of the body is so so like little that anything that we're saying now, like 10 years, it may be like totally wrong, right? So it's like we got to work with what we can, what we can. And for each person it's going to be different, right? Like our favorite answer is it depends, right? So it's like, you know for one person it's raw veganism, for the next person it's only meat, or I don't know, to be
Well, but I
honest.
think again, right? Like,
Which is popular.
Yeah,
I think it goes down to perceptually, like circumstance too, though, right? Like,
yeah,
I think the conversation that the idea of vegan is interesting, right? Because there's a moral parameter around it in most conversation points, right? So most people you talk to, there's a pain point with when you have that conversation. You're like, hey, okay, like, you're vegan, okay, well, you're vegan because most people that are vegan are not vegan for optimal health. They're vegan because they care about animals, right?
Right.
Which I appreciate all in its own right, right? On the other hand, you get people that are that polar opposite, which unfortunately in today's society is like, that's the way things are, right? Like, you're far left or far right, and the moderate people don't seem to get much like conversation. And so when I hear vegan, like, I always am like, well, because it's like it becomes a pain point, and there's like an emotional attachment to that, right? And I kind of appreciate what you're saying here. It's not like an absolute science, or it's not an absolute like, hey, you have to go vegan. It's just, this worked for me, and if you're sick, this is a way to heal you that doesn't involve pharmaceuticals, which, by the way, we know aren't good for us. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, what I tell people is, look, what I do is basically help people detoxify and cleanse the
right,
body. Let's get you well first. Now,
right.
once we get you well first, if you want to go back to your diets, that's fine. Go back to your diets, right? But my focus is to help people and get them well first. Now, if you don't want to do the diet long term, that's fine. You don't have to do the diet long term, but it's really the art of cleaning and detoxifying, and like you were saying earlier, really just letting the body go back to its normal states.
One, presumably, right? Like we
Yeah.
have canine teeth, right? A primary makeup of our body is protein. Like, there is a need for that component. And so the reality is like, if you get rid of the garbage and your body's working correctly, presumably you should be able to reintroduce things into your diet, right? Like, it's like the idea of being keto, right? Like, people come to me all the time, like, what do you think of keto? I'm like, well, what's your exit plan? Because the reality of keto is like, you probably aren't gonna be able to do that stuff forever, right? There's
Yeah.
gonna be a point in your life where you have a carb, and it's gonna make you sick because you don't have the gut biomes to digest the carb, right? And
Right.
so I think the reality of, I mean, if you're a hunter or gatherer, and we're Indians in huts, and somebody walks up and hands you a strawberry and you don't eat it, Like that would be presumably crazy, right? Because it's food, it's nutrients.
Right.
Conversely, if you're a hunter and gatherer and somebody walks up and they offer you a piece of chicken, same, right? Like the reality is we're built to survive. But the problem is we're surviving on abundance currently, right? Like we've never had more exposure to food in an easier sense, and the food's never been worse for us. You know what I mean? Like you drive down the street and you're going to drive by 30 places that have food available to you. And they're all in business, which means that people are buying the food from the places, right? Because like if they don't make money, they don't stay open, right? So if you drive by Wendy's and next door to Wendy's is Taco Bell, and next door to Taco Bell is Del Taco, and next door to Del Taco is whatever, In-N-Out, they're all open.
Yeah.
Which means people are eating the food, right? Because it's kind of expensive. We're in California. This shit's no joke, right?
Yeah.
So the harsh, unfortunate reality of these places is fucking dog. Like I swear to God, the dogs know that we're podcasting. The harsh reality of this conversation, which is unfortunate, is like all these companies make money and they all make people sick. Really, really sick. Like, I mean, really sick. Like potential downfall of humanity sick. And Victor's over here and he's like, yo, I can help make you better by giving you like natural, real fucking food. And I imagine the pushback on this has got to be aggressive.
Yeah. A couple years ago, it was really aggressive. Even my family was scared. They're like, you're crazy. What are you doing? You're going to, hurt yourself. But, 8 years later being on this diet, and I've been 100%. I haven't had any cocoa in probably 8 years. I'm doing better than ever, going all the way back. But, that's basically what I tell people is when you're – sorry, I lost my train of thought.
The dogs get me every time.
It's so what I was going to say, going back to your comment about food, how there's a restaurant in every corner, is we are the only animal in the world. And, some people say we're not animals, but
we're animals.
We are, we're part of this ecosystem in the world, but we're the only animal in the world that we don't know what's our proper diets. If you think about it, we eat everything that you could think of. We eat meats, fruits, vegetables, legumes, insects. We eat the private parts of animals. Certain cultures, they drink their own urine. Some other cultures, they drink the poop of animals so they can have a better GI tract, or the ecosystem within the GI tract. So we don't really know what's the proper food for the human being, for the Homo sapien, right? And that's when people really start getting sick. Now, what I tell people, not to get too political or anything, is if I hit you on the back of the head and you lost your whole memory, and I throw you in the wilds and you can see every animal in the world there, and you completely forgot how to eat, what animal would you choose to eat like? Would you eat like a cow? Probably not. That's a herbivore. Would you eat like, a tiger? Probably not. That's a carnivore. Most likely you're going to choose a primate, which is like a chimpanzee, a gorilla, right? Genetically, they're probably somewhere between 97, 98% genetically just like us. So wouldn't it make the most sense to eat like a primates, which their diet is mainly fruits, vegetables, nuts, and seeds? And maybe from my studies and research, maybe it's like a 1% meats.
Yeah.
Which, if you do the math, it probably comes out to one meal a year.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and it's that desperation. It's not what they want.
Yeah, exactly. And you're right. Many of us are surviving. We're not really living on certain diets. And that's unfortunate, because the diets that we consume are really just hurting us in the long term. And it becomes genetic, right? What I do today is going to hurt the next generation of, if I have kids, they're going to hurt them. And then whatever they do is going to hurt the next generation. However, we live in a dualistic world. So if there is death, there is life. If you could cause damage, you could regenerate and reverse some of these issues. So genetically, you could actually become stronger if you do the proper things. And then that would help the next generation.
Well, and that's actually an interesting statement all on its own, right? So like, I have daughters that are 6 years old, and statistically, they're the first generation of humans that won't outlive the prior generation. And
Yeah.
so, Kai and I say this quite often, but like we've really lost touch of what it is to be human, right? Like, for Christ's sakes, people come to me and they pay me to teach them to breathe. Like, that's
Yeah.
insane. Like, if you think about that logically, that doesn't make sense. I say it a lot, and I don't think that settles in people, that they don't understand that, like, your breath pattern has literally been altered by the way you live your life. That's crazy.
Yes.
But it's the truth. It's what it is, what it is. And I think that's kind of the struggle with the direction of mankind, right? Is we're really going to away from what we're probably supposed to be. Now, here's the thing: I don't know. I it's hard for me to make some sort of correlation because, like, frankly, I don't have all the answers. And the harsh reality is like we don't know where we came from. Like, we don't really know what we are. Like, there's amphibian mammal theories like that we're actually from the ocean because we carry far more body mass and weight and blubber than primates. And like, there's all kinds of crazy shit out there that we don't know, like quantum realm theories and weird shit, right? And Guy, I see you.
I know. I saw it
too. But the truth is, we don't know, right? Like, I can't sit here and tell you that I know anything more than the next guy. I'm guessing, really, right? But what we do know is that micronutrient dense diets that don't have a lot of added preservatives and garbage are the easiest way to create digestion and make the body function correctly. Go ahead, Kai. I can't hear you, Kai. I hate this app. We paid for it too. It's the worst part. We like gave them money for this app to suck. Sign it, Kai. Or just write it. I love that you're the one who we don't have sound from, finally. It's usually me that messes this up. But just to continue with, I'll continue with my point since we lost Kylie for a second. This is what's my struggle with these conversations with people is like, having a closed mind regarding food is kind of crazy to me. And the problem is it has become politicized, right? And as it becomes politicized, now all of a sudden, now there's this deep meaning to it, right? Like it's much like a religion. And so I think that's my struggle is like, as soon as you close yourself off to those ideals, then what? Right?
Yeah.
I can't say that they're wrong. You know what I mean? I can't say that you're wrong. You know what I mean? I have no freaking clue, but the evidence is there. You were sick as fuck and now you're not.
Right.
You know what I mean? And you're obviously intelligent and well-spoken. So like, I'm into it. Kai says that his internet is ass. And the last couple of minutes went out. Are you kidding me? The whole last couple of minutes? We still can't hear you. Maybe none of this is going on. Dang it, Kai. Dude. The worst part is Kai's the primary on this. So there's a chance that none of this records.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
Dude, I busted out aqua mammal theory. What the hell, man?
I know.
Let's pretend like this is still going. But so I guess that's one of my questions to you is like,
sure.
Do you struggle with backlash?
In what sense?
Like just from people, like in a world politically where the carnivore diet is trudging forward and somehow veganism has become this like far left connected movement. Like, do you struggle with coming to people and saying, hey, this is what I do, and people just like laugh at you?
No, actually, surprisingly, no. Awesome. I tell them my story, and then they're able to empathize with me, and they're able to understand. And I think that's the most important thing. I don't expect for people to change their diets or anything like that, but I do hope that they could understand what I am doing. But no, it's just I tell them my story, I tell them what I do, and I actually had a mentor. So I didn't do this completely on my own. The first year or two, I actually had a mentor that was practicing these diets. And he kind of helped me and guided me through this journey in the beginning. And I remember he told me that, you don't have to say anything. Just sit with your food. And I bet you everyone around you would want a slice or a piece of whatever you're eating. And I was like, okay, whatever, so, but it's true. Whether it's family, friends, or work related dinners, I am there, I'm sitting, and everyone says, your food looks really good. That looks really good. Can I have some? Yes. And even some of my coworkers, some of my friends, they have been changing their diets, whether it's just eating more fruit in the morning, whether it's just getting a smoothie in or a green drink in, they're changing their diet. I did not push anything on them. I just basically sit, I tell them my story, this is what I do, and then they themselves want to make a change.
I love that. Do you find it difficult to find the food and the resources that you need, like locally?
Uh, Not really. I mean, we live in Southern California. Well,
Right.
and we pretty much have everything here. And in fact, for work, I travel a lot. My job is 100% travel. So I'm always in a different state, in a different city, and there's always food that I need,
Right.
everything I need. Now, the question is, what is the quality of food, right?
Right.
What is the quality of fruits and vegetables? Yeah, there's certain locations that is not the best, right? You're
I've
not
heard
going to,
that.
there's going to be, sometimes I travel to rural areas for work, and there's times where you find a small grocery store that may not have the best fruits or vegetables
Right.
compared to maybe like a Whole Foods, a Sprouts.
Right.
But you learn to live with it. You could, if the fresh food is not the best, then you could always go to frozen
Right.
food, right? That would be your second option. Sometimes if frozen, it's not all the way there. You could try dry fruits, right? So
Okay.
you always get to play and manage with it. And luckily for me, because of work, I'm only there a short amount of time. I'm only
Right.
there anywhere from 5 to 10 days, and then boom, I'm in a new city.
Okay.
So I get to experience, and that was actually one of my concerns when I started working here, especially going to more like rural areas in Washington and Oregon. Would they have enough for me to actually sustain myself? And they do.
Cool. Nice. Are you based out of California?
Yes.
And in like so I'm in South Orange County where we've got a couple local farms. They have
Okay.
the local CSAs.
Yeah.
Do you partake in anything like that?
No, honestly, no. I would like to, but no, I don't partake in anything like that. I definitely
So
support your local farmers.
the
Yeah.
for the viewers out there that don't know what CSA is, I realize I said that word and you may not know what that is. CSA is a community supported agriculture. It's where farms come together and they take crops and they make baskets out of the crops, and they do it kind of locally because most farms struggle with, they may only have one crop or two crops, so it's hard to put together like a basket with some sort of variance. So
Yeah.
locally you'll see 3 or 4 farms that'll fill a basket, so you actually have some sort of variance where it's not just like corn or just lettuce or kale or whatever else. So you, most of what you're doing is going to be at like Sprouts and Whole Foods.
Yeah, or Costco.
Oh,
That's where I
nice.
go to. And again, my job is 100% travel, so I have to live off the local markets in town because otherwise, I can't go to a farmer's market
Right.
because of either they don't have it during that day because I'm always on the go. So I actually travel with food. I prepare with food, and I'm always traveling with food.
Do you, what are your thoughts in terms of like organic versus non-organic? Like, do you have like a preference in the two worlds?
Um, it kind of depends. Now, I understand. I do this. I've been doing this diet for 8 years. Organic could be very expensive. Unfortunately, but just for the viewers out there, just go ahead and do your best. Now, if you could buy and afford organic, go ahead, buy and buy organic, buy locally, support your farmers. Go ahead and do that. If you can't, that's okay too. The first couple of years, again, I was bedridden. I started this diet. Basically, whatever savings that I've had, I utilize for herbs and food, right? So I didn't have any real income coming in for anywhere from 3 to 5 years.
Right.
So that was very rough. But what I usually do, especially with certain fruits and vegetables that are not organic, I put them in the sink and I put vinegar. You could put vinegar in there, let them soak for a few minutes, and that usually, from my research and studies, that usually takes a lot of the pesticides out, right? But we could only do the best we can because, well, we don't live in the tropics. We live in
Yeah,
this modern world that unfortunately we have crappy food.
it's true. I mean, it's just kind of is what it is. As far as like some of your like favorites, I know you said you travel around the United States. Do you have anything that like you particularly like really enjoy or found that has like, like higher nutrient content that's like maybe more valuable to people?
What do you mean? Like,
Well, like if like people are choosing between like a strawberry and an apple, or like is there foods that you find that are more suitable for healing that have better profiles that people should lean towards?
well, what I tell people is your fruit cleans you, your vegetables rebuild you,
Okay.
right? So it depends where you are, right? If you are trying to detoxify and clean the body, then we want to focus more on the fruits. Now, if you want to rebuild after cleaning and detoxifying, then you want to go more towards your vegetables. Um, but again, going back to what I said earlier, we utilize food as a tool. Our goal to detoxify is not certain specific food. It's more about cleaning and cleansing the body, focusing on the lymphatic system. How can we move it? How can we get all that mucus, that mucal plaque out of you?
Okay. Kai, can you say something to see if I can hear you?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Oh, he's back. Welcome, Kai. Welcome to the
Hey.
podcast. This is
Hey.
Root Solution Learns to Control the Basics. We're here with
Wow.
Victor. Welcome, Kai. Kai's had audio difficulty almost the whole show, guys. So I know he's normally kind of quiet and I don't shut up, but that's been the real reason. But he back now.
Oh
So
yeah.
Kai, we just talked about kind of like, is there foods that he likes better? Is there stuff? Is there shit that he takes from people in the cultures? And then like kind of some of the things he likes. Kai, I'm sure you've been like beating the hammer to say stuff and haven't got to. What are some questions you have?
Yeah, if you haven't gone through like the detoxifying with like herbs and stuff, what's your route with that? Do you like do more like Chinese acupuncture herbal route, or is there like a different thing that you do?
Well, I mean, you could just buy like a herbalist book, right? It'll teach you about all the different herbs. From my understanding, depending where you are in the world, they'll have different herbs for the different parts of the body that we, for example, maybe in China, there's certain herbs that we won't have in the United States, right? In the tropics, they may have certain herbs that they won't have in Europe. So it's important to really just read some of these books and understand what certain herbs are for. For example, like horsetail, right, is really good for the kidneys. It's really good for the urinary tract. Licorice is really good for the adrenals, and just really focus on what certain herbs are for the body and utilize those herbs. Also, formulas are stronger than individual herbs. And what I mean by formulas is a combination of herbs will help you support the body better or a specific issue than just one specific herb.
Okay. And then also with when you when you're working with people and you are taking them through like certain like diet and all that and the herbs, are you like what is your like assessment of what they're doing? I'm assuming that you go through their symptomology and go based off that, or is there like deeper or anything else that you go through?
Yeah, so it really just depends on the person, but we'll just have a regular conversation, talk about the symptomology that they're feeling, some of the issues that they have. But the first thing before starting the diet, what I like to do is really, I want them to know why they're doing the things that they're doing, right? You got to have your why you're starting on this new health journey. If you don't know your why and why you're doing the things that you're doing, you're probably not going to be successful in the long run. And what I mean by that, let's say, you are a 60-year-old, a 70-year-old, and you have grandchildren, or maybe 40-year-olds, and you have kids, and you have cancer, you have a very chronic degenerative disease that is maybe between life and death. right? Those are the things that you have to think about. Those are the things that you have to bring that willpower in order for you to be successful. And I have people start a journal. I really want you to be in tune with your, not just your body, but your emotions, your mentality. How do you feel? What do you think? And once we start there, then we start on the diet and maybe like a herbal protocol.
Okay, cool. That's all I've got, Noah.
Victor, it's been awesome, man. I'll be honest with you. I wasn't really sure what to expect from this conversation, but I see a lot of parallels to a lot of stuff we kind of already talked about historically, and things that we actually believe to be really true. And I think, any way that people can look outside the box to find solutions that isn't pharmaceutical intervention or leaning on somebody who has a limited view on health, being a lot of doctors, unfortunately. I don't want to say all, but a lot. It's always great for me to see people, just giving a shit about people and caring. And so the fact that you obviously just care about trying to spread your message and help people find what you found in terms of health is incredible. I can't thank you enough for being here, man. I really have appreciated hearing your story, and I look forward to continuing to follow you and seeing kind of your growth and what you got going on, man. Your Instagram's great. Go ahead and shout it out. I think everybody should hear about it.
Yeah, if you want to learn more or just kind of follow my health journey on Instagram, I am at social.leaf, and you could also find my YouTube channel, Social Leaf. Go ahead there, subscribe, leave any comments, questions that you have about this podcast or anything I said. I'm always willing to help and communicate with others, like-minded individuals, or just people that are curious.
I love that. Guys, I'm root.solution on Instagram. I'm Noah Drew and Root Solution on Facebook. I check it sometimes, I guess. Guys, feel free to reach out to me with any questions, comments, and concerns. Kai, you want to hit him with the underscores?
Oh, yeah. At control_the_basics. But thank you again, Victor, for being on here and sharing your story. It's been a pleasure the whole time that I was here. But
from what I could hear, it was cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you guys too, man. I appreciate it. I'm glad we were able to connect finally, and appreciate it. And I also look forward to learning more. I love the podcast and following all of you. So thank you again.
We appreciate it, man. We'll definitely have you on in the future too. I think hearing like your growth and stuff is pretty cool, and I think it gives people a different perspective on health. So greatly appreciated, guys. This is Root Solution learns to control the basics. Learning to control the basics. I don't know the name of my own podcast.
That's why I do it.
Thanks again.
All right.
We'll see you guys on the flippity flop.
Flippity flap.